Hi, I'm John Dinkle, and this is the Growth in Business podcast for Citybiz, where we talk with local and national sales leaders, marketing professionals, and business development folks to learn about new and trusted strategies to grow your business. I'm here today with Matt Cohen, Regional Manager of Business Banking with M&T Bank. Welcome, Matt, and thanks for being on the show.
John, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
So we know, of course, M&T Bank has strong foothold in Baltimore and the Maryland region, and has so for many years. But I thought it'd be good to kick things off by taking a couple of minutes to tell us a little bit about M&T Bank, and while you're at it, could you tell us your role there and a brief background?
Yeah, so a little about M&T. As most of you know, in Baltimore, we've been here since about 2005, but the bank is about 150 years old, headquartered out of Buffalo, New York. We currently have a presence from Buffalo stretching all the way down to Richmond, Virginia, and excited about the recent acquisition of our friends at People's United Bank that will add the market areas of Maine all the way down to Virginia, making us one of the larger banks in that Northeast corridor. Myself personally, I've been with M&T Bank now for about 18 years. During that 18-year career, I've played a couple of different roles. My current role is oversight of the Baltimore region within our business banking division. So to be a little bit more specific, we're focused on companies that are zero to about $25 million in revenue. And the easiest way to describe what we do is we're the quarterback for our clients and customers to the rest of the bank. So we're at the center of that wagon wheel, trying to bring in our partners and the rest of the bank as necessary. So, with that, we also interact with the other divisions of the bank, which are obviously, many of them are headquartered locally here in Baltimore.
Excellent. Well, thanks for sharing. Appreciate it. So as you know, we want to talk about growth today. And so I'd like to start off by asking you, what has been your greatest strategy around growth of your commercial banking division at M&T so far this year?
Yeah, John, I love this question. Thank you. I have a saying that I've lived by, I think, throughout most of my career, and I think it parlays its way into a sales strategy. And the saying is very simple, which is a goal without a plan is just a wish. And I think if you're going to take that and apply that to any type of sales strategy, we use words like planned week, pre-call planning. You can't impact what's going to happen. You can't impact what happened yesterday, but you can impact what's going to happen tomorrow. And I think if you begin to look at it, our greatest strategy is our knowledge of our customers, the knowledge of the bank, and then creating some sort of thought leadership plan that we can approach the market with that allows our bankers to actually provide value and not just be order takers as they go through their sales process.
Yeah, and that's such a great point, Matt, because as you know, anybody can kind of come up with a plan, but it's the execution, right? It's getting out there, making sure you're executing, keeping focused on the plan, work the plan, and you hear that a lot. So what measures do you feel you've put in place or are putting in place to kind of keep focus, keep executing on the plan?
Yeah, I think again, I love the follow-up question there because you're right. It's very easy to come up with a plan. And as you go through sales organizations, commercial banking is no different than a lot of other sales roles, which is our job is to get out there in the community, understand what the needs are. And your question is really focused on how do we hold people accountable to executing on that plan that they set. And, we do that by constant communication. Nobody is at this alone. And most of the experiences that we have as commercial bankers, most of them have been experienced before by people on the team. So from a strategic standpoint, we run a forward-looking sales meeting every week. Since we're back in person now 1 day a week at the bank, we now meet in person on Wednesdays, and we share stories. We share stories about what happened last week and what pieces of the puzzle we're targeting for the next week. And then we really try and hold each other accountable by, hey, this is what I'm going to execute on. And then share with the team what happened, what was the outcome. And I think if you could create an environment of vulnerability within a sales team, they can really begin to grow and leverage each other to become stronger together, but then still keep a healthy level of competition between them while lifting each other up.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. I like what you had to say too about accountability, because I think accountability can sometimes have a negative connotation, but when it comes to sales and business development and even marketing, you have to have that, and it doesn't have to be in a negative way. It could be in a really positive way, because ultimately you're there to support your team, keep them motivated, keep the resources coming so that they can do their jobs right.
Yeah, and it's such a John. Accountability is one of those negative words. It has that negative connotation to it. But everything we do, we're being held accountable for in this world, whether it's personally or professionally. And sales is no different. And I go back to where we started. Your initial question, which is if you can execute a process consistently, and then be vulnerable enough to say, "Hey, I'm not really sure what to do at this point in time," and then ask a question. Like I said, most things can be solved because someone else has experienced it. Maybe not in the exact same way you would, but at least if you can open up that door for conversation, we can all continue to get better and grow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Appreciate that. And so what would you say would be your, three inhibitors to growth?
Yeah. It's interesting. I'd say people is a big inhibitor to growth because while I had a great answer earlier for your question of, what the plan and the strategy looks like, the reality is that execution of that plan and strategy and vulnerability and accountability, it requires a very specific type of person. And I'd say, as you see throughout, I'm sure you've had this with other sales leaders and business owners, the market is tough right now. And I think skill sets vary. And, our ability to find the right people that can continue the bank's culture of a consultative sales process is a challenge. So I'd say people is one inhibitor to growth because even if you hire them right, keeping them engaged for a long period of time can sometimes be a challenge as they look around and see other opportunities. I think the easy other answer, the inhibitor to growth, is the interest rate environment right now. I don't want to go too deep down commercial banking because everybody that's listening is eventually going to fall asleep. But the reality is when you're in a volatile interest rate market, it's an inhibitor to growth because you spend a lot of times explaining to people what the impact of the changes of interest rates are, rather than the impact of the money that we're going to lend or the deposits we're going to gather. And you asked for three. I'd have to take a break on that one and think through what the third one is. Maybe come back to that third one later on.
Yeah, that's great. Great. I appreciate you sharing. Yeah, and one other thing I wanted to talk about too was around relationship building, and I know obviously in your field, relationship banking is huge, right? So I wonder, in your opinion, how important is relationship building in today's sales environment? And given the technical nature now of sales, I mean, from CRMs to email platforms, all kinds of different things. There's also that shift to a lot of virtual meetings because of the pandemic. Could you talk a little bit about that, like the importance of relationship building still?
Yeah, John, and I think relationship building is everything. If you look at the banking space, not only has it become a commodity between banks, meaning the products that we offer. Renee Jones, in our annual letter to shareholder, Renee is our CEO, shared an interesting statistic that had to do with the amount of competition that's out there from non-banks, right? So the SoFis of the world, the online lenders, and they provide a meaningful service to the market. But at the same time, where they lack is where we pick up at times. And the only differentiator we have there is the relationships that we have in the market. Our ability to walk into the community and the organizations that we support and show up as a face. Our ability to pick the phone up and call you because we know that your daughter or your son is graduating high school or preschool or anything along the way. That's what causes people to rely on you. And I think when you're dealing with people's money, people's businesses, especially in the world in which we are, which is really family-owned businesses, the business is the family and the family is the business. So without that relationship, how can they ever trust you to know that you're doing what's right for them? You mentioned a little bit just about the virtual environment. It's harder, right? Because I think everybody likes to sit down. You tend to jump into business a lot quicker when you're conversing over WebEx or Zoom or whichever platform you're using. But there's still an opportunity to take a look around like we teach in the Basic Sales 101. What do you see in the background? ask a question of what's important and allow that to drive a conversation.
Yeah, I've actually thought that this whole, switch to virtual over the past year and a half. Now things are opening up a little bit more, of course, and going on a lot more, in-person meetings. But I think this virtual environment has allowed people to meet a lot more people more quickly. And to your point, in the background, and you can see, how people live a little bit, and so where's the commonality there? And if you see like golf clubs, or behind me is a picture of Led Zeppelin lyrics, or whatever that is, and you can start to build that relationship through some of these, and you can do it very quickly, within a 30-minute time spot. So to your point, I think there is definitely some validity to this new kind of methodology around virtual meetings.
Yeah, I mean, John Piper's you can see her over my left shoulder. She's a consummate performer in all WebExes and Zoom. So I'd like to think most of Baltimore has seen her at one point or another on a Zoom. So she's not with me in the office, but she's with me on every call these days.
I love it. What would you say? What's one thing you've learned recently about sales or business development that you feel has impacted your growth positively?
It's a great question, around what we've learned that's impacted sales positively. And I really think it's the standard, keep it simple, and I'll let you fill in that last word there. We teach my 5-year-old not to say it, so I won't say it here. But I think that's a lot of where our focus is, which is when you try and overcomplicate a message, when you try and overcomplicate a sales process, you get away from what the goal is you're actually trying to achieve. And in what we do, we're trying to help businesses identify the capital structure of their company so that they can achieve whatever goal it is. And bank capital always has a place within that capital stack. And when we try and overcomplicate where it should fit, the conversation then moves past what your initial goal was and starts to arrive back at what is best for one individual. So I think if there's one strategy I've learned that positively can influence sales, it's keep it simple. Keep it simple on what the goal is and keep everybody on the same page and have enough of a relationship where you can share when you don't know if you're moving in the right direction to get yourself right back on track. And I'd say especially, we were talking about Zoom. I think in this environment where we are half virtual, half in person, the more we can keep focused on message, what the goal is, it provides more time for us to get at what's most important, which becomes the execution of whatever it is that we're talking about.
Yeah, I think that's good. I like that. You could get very distracted, right, with all this technology and automation and sales, but it goes back to relationship building, and keeping it simple, and asking your clients, where their needs are, how you can help them, even if it's beyond the scope of your work, to try to become that trusted advisor ultimately. Because I imagine in your world, you're working with people for a long time, right?
Yeah. I mean, I had a conversation just last week with a client that I had initially brought to the bank, almost 20 years ago, 18 years ago now. And now he's still within the portfolio. He's having some issues with fraud in the market. And we have the relationship to get in there and figure out how to solve the problem because we have that tenure of that relationship. So, it's a nice place to be.
That's great. That's awesome. I wanted to get your opinion on this is what do you feel is more important to a company's growth, and looking at it from M&T side, and you obviously have a lot of marketing resources and things like that. Do you think inbound lead generation is more important to your business, or that more outbound lead generation? And why would you say?
Yeah, I want to make sure that I understand inbound and outbound, right? So make sure we're speaking the same language there. And I interpret
Yeah, because it's different. Every organization has its own definition of that, it seems, right?
Yeah, I interpret inbound as what our marketing team drives, and I look at outbound as what our sales team is driving, right? And that's a very simple designation that I'll use when I answer the question. And when you look at the value of each of them, I always consider marketing, right? Marketing is that lead generation, and M&T Bank, with the amount of investment in both people and community and marketing, pure marketing. Obviously having the Ravens helps during football season. It drives a lot of inbound opportunities for us here in this market. But with that said, even though you might get a lot from the inbound calling, if you don't handle those correctly by having an outbound sales technique or process or communication cadence, you really can't be that successful. So almost every inbound call at some point becomes an outbound opportunity. So I'd say that they're layered together. If you look at it for growth, though, which is the focus of what we're talking about, I do believe that outbound piece is extremely important. Because if you just sit around and wait for things to come to you, you're only going to get so far. And you're relying on outward forces to make things happen, which I view as the inward, the marketing side. Where if you could take that marketing dollars and then show up to the market and enhance it by having great conversations, I mean, you can really hit the accelerator on growth, because then you've got both, or I could say both motors, right? You got dual motor Teslas. You get both motors firing at the same side. You could move a lot faster in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's smart. I appreciate that. So one last question. We talked about strategy before. What do you feel has been like a top tactic, of acquiring, new business over the past year for you guys?
Yeah, I think it's doing the right thing 100% of the time. It's very simple. But doing the right thing doesn't always mean that you do exactly what's wanted. It just means that you're leading with your heart. You're leading with what's with the best interest of the people that you're interacting with, both internally at the bank, meaning the partners that'll be impacted by by your decisions, and then also your customers. Sometimes a quick no is better than a quick no is just as good as a quick yes, right? Because nobody likes to be dragged through. In our industry has a history of that. And I think just doing what's right 100% of the time puts you in a position to ask somebody for your next introduction. So I'll finish where we started. Relationship building is everything in our business. And if I could do good by you, what we know then is I can ask you for an introduction of somebody else that I could do good by. And if people trust that you always have their best interest in mind, I think you really have an opportunity to make one meeting, 2 or 3 meetings, and you start getting to that multiplier effect, which is a strategy for success.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here today and sharing your expertise around growth. I love talking about it, and so I appreciate you taking the time. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. This is wonderful.
And this has been a Growth in Business podcast for Citybiz, and I'm John Dinkle. Enjoy the rest of your day.